Now let's turn our attention to Africa, specifically France-Afrique, meaning the former French colonies in the African continent. They're witnessing a revolution. Not another coup, but a sort of cultural revolution. These former French colonies are overthrowing an unusual oppressor, the French language, or rather the traditional proper version of French. And here's something you may not know. Of all the French speakers in the world, Africa is home to about 60%. And in a few decades, this will go up to 80%. 80% of the world's French speakers will be Africans. The Democratic Republic of Congo already has more French speakers than France. So obviously, local African languages are influencing their French and changing the French language. Here's our report.
What comes to your mind when you think of the heart of French culture? Perhaps you think of the Eiffel Tower or the Arc de Triomphe, maybe a moonlit stroll along the bank of the Seine River. But have you ever thought of a walk beside the Congo River in Kinshasa instead? Maybe you should, because in a few years, the DRC's capital, Kinshasa, may become the world's most populous French-speaking city. The French may have officially left the African continent a few decades ago, but they left their language behind in their former colonies. And France-Afrique is giving the French language an African twist. The word pain in French means bread, but in Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, pain also means boyfriend. Choco, the short form of chocolat or chocolate, is now a euphemism for sweet. So men should be taking it as a compliment if they're ever referred to as chocolate bread in French. This is just one example of how the French language is changing, and a lot of it is due to African nations taking ownership of their former colonizers' language. Today, 60% of all French speakers live in Africa, and that number will keep growing. Europe is graying while Africa is a young continent. In the next few decades, 4 out of 5 French speakers will be based in Africa. The twist to the language isn't unique to African French. Most former colonies have made their oppressor's language their own. Look at India and English. Have you ever heard of the term prepone? It's the opposite of postpone, short for bringing some predetermined arrangement forward in time. This handy little word isn't technically proper English. It's an invention by Indians, and the English language seems far less cumbersome because of it. There are, of course, numerous other examples. Terms like doing the needful, passing out of school or college, or going out of station are all Indianisms. In much the same way, Africanisms are bound to leave the French language a bit more joyful. Ironically, France, the country which coined the term lingua franca, may linguistically get left behind, especially considering some of their more recent moves. Last month, French President Emmanuel Macron inaugurated one of his most expensive cultural projects, the International City of the French Language. It's a museum located in northern France, one that's dedicated to preserving classical French. The museum may actually be a good idea, because of how Africa has been reacting to its colonial past lately. Some former French colonies have moved to remove French as their official language. Mali and Burkina Faso have done it this year. Others may follow. But even if they don't remove it, the former African colonies will continue putting their spin on the French language. So maybe Macron's museum will be the last place to find classical French. As for Africa, the French there will remain a little sweeter, or should we say choco.